Hey guys, and welcome to another Failures Anonymous Real Stories. Today we have Jen with us, and just to make it quick, and let's go to Jen. So, hi Jen, and thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for being real and for showing up and being open to talk about your failures.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. We're going to dive into the deep end.
Yes, yes, we do that here. So my first question is always, can you like a little bit introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So, my name is Jen Moff. I specialize in utilizing mindfulness as a tool for manifestation, which allows women and men to be able to really tap into the innate power that they have within and level up any area of their life that they're dreaming to. I typically work with women who are solopreneurs and are single. They maybe are struggling in their business a little bit. They've kind of plateaued and they don't have a romantic relationship and they'd really like one. So I specialize in getting the business more aligned and doing a lot of inner work to get their relationships where they'd like them to be.
Okay, okay, this sounds interesting. This sounds interesting. And how do you use mindfulness for that manifestation? I mean, I'm a huge fan of mindfulness, so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you just sparked something that's interesting to me.
So, the history of mindfulness basically originated in philosophical roots and spiritual roots in the East. Both Hinduism and Buddhism have lots of history there. And it was brought over to the West by a guy named John Kabat-Zinn about, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago at this point. And the focus that he really approached mindfulness with was one of stress relief and more of a secular tool. So I've seen how it's been utilized and what it's offered in both the East and the West. And I realized that I had been using it differently this entire time. And so to me, what mindfulness does really beautifully is help you identify the soul within, because there's a formal practice and an informal practice. There's the meditative portion, and then there's just kind of going about your day and approaching things in a mindful way. And a lot of times you might hear the definition of mindfulness as being the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. So when I was practicing it in a formal sense, I was able to separate the mind, the thoughts, from the observer, the witness, and the true person within that has that innate power. And that really amazing moment of recognizing that in and of itself is really powerful. So having that as kind of a base and then using that in all the informal practices and anything that I did, I started to notice that because I would take myself out of the thought, I reduced a lot of judgment and a lot of labels, and any shame that I still had in my energy body and my system was much more easily transmuted, released, healed, processed, because I wasn't associating with those thought patterns. And that made such a difference for me in being able to let go of the past, let go of a lot of the failures, if you will, that we experience in our lives. And it's a tool that I use with all of my clients. It's really, really powerful. It's
Okay,
more than the stress loss. It's about focusing on what you gain from the practice, which is your power again.
okay. Yeah, I strongly agree. I strongly agree. Mindfulness was one of the main things that mindfulness and emotional intelligence, those two things were
Mm-hmm.
the foundation when I was fighting back my battle from my failures and all of that.
Mm.
But it's not about me today, it's about you. So you mentioned failures, and yeah, let's dive into like what which one would you say was your biggest failure so far?
Oh, that's a tough one because there's so many. There's a couple that come to mind. I would say a long-standing one that has taken what I think is the longest to kind of overcome, and I'm still, a work in progress, is in my romantic relationships as well. I definitely have made choices that have put myself in situations that unfortunately did not result in positive things for me. I've trusted people that I haven't, that I should not have, rather, and that's resulted in a lot of pain. There was 2 abusive relationships and 2 rapes that I've experienced because of those choices. I think that's where we should focus today.
Okay. But how would you characterize the failure in that happening? Was it that you let go of control, or was it a specific incident that you would say was a failure? So what was the gist of the failure there?
I would say the core failure is not loving and trusting myself. I failed myself in that way. And a very early on one, and one thing I would say that happened both times when I was raped was like you said, I lost a little bit of control. I was drinking heavily in both of those situations, and it resulted in what it resulted in. I've since learned after the second one, it took me two goes to recognize if I'm in a situation with a male that I may find attractive, I may not, I limit myself to only 2 drinks, 2 alcoholic beverages, because beyond that, as you said, I lose a little bit of the control that I need. And I've stuck to that. There's only been a small handful of times that I've had like 3 glasses, and one was at my sister's wedding. So.
Okay. I mean, okay. So yeah, rapes didn't happen to me, but failing in relationships, I don't know. The only sentence that comes to my mind right now, and I know it might not be the most appropriate one, but it's you and me both, sister. I
Say
failed.
that again.
You and me both, sister. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that that's one of the very famous US sentences. That's why. I mean, I'm not coming from US, so I apologize if this was inappropriate. But
No,
I mean, yeah,
it was totally cool.
yeah, relationship, I sucked at them. I mean, now I'm just happily single, thankfully.
That's an accomplishment in and of itself for a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah. So okay, were those 2 rapes with the same person, or those were
2 separate people? The first one was in the fall of 2000. I was a freshman at college. And the last one was around this time of the year in 2011, actually. Completely different situation. One was someone in the military, and the second one was a prominent business owner in the community I lived in.
Okay. Okay, let's dive now a little bit more into that. I'm not a woman, so can you explain I'm not. Could you, for example, try to explain to me how all that made you feel? What was going inside of you? The emotions at the time of happening, or was it more emotional after, the day after? Was it more you giving up that control away, or was it the act itself?
I'd say I've done a fair amount of work on myself. So because of that, I'm able to speak about this in a fairly, what I would hope is an articulate way. But it wasn't the act itself. It was, as I started to allude to before, it's abandoning myself and my own needs and not listening to myself. Because in hindsight, I can look back and see like red flag here, warning sign there, just lots of little things. In the moment during them, for me, the experience was very disassociative. I definitely like crawled up out of body and witnessed things like almost like a drone shot from above. And it was afterward that that trauma really starts to kind of settle into the physical, mental, emotional bodies and spiritual bodies. And the product of that is what causes you to distrust yourself, which then causes distrust in others, because if we don't trust ourselves, how can we know that this person or that person that we bring into our lives is going to be trustworthy? A loss of self-esteem, seeing, you know, your self-worth is being very low because this happened. There's a lot of self-blame that happens in rape cases, of assuming that you did something wrong, that you could have prevented it, you should have done this, whatever. And none of that is true. I think there's a large movement that's happening right now in the, you know, world about consent and respect, and kind of getting back in balance with who we are as humans, and having both, you know, the masculine and the feminine side, and being willing to, you know, look at ourselves. And I'd say that the final thing that I would say about it is just that the feeling during it is almost of a void. It's non-existent for me. Again, it's probably very different for other people or similar. But afterward, there's almost like a tightening that happens, a pulling in, a shrinking. Like you don't want to be seen, you want to hide. There's those feelings for sure.
Okay, and like if we move into this after part more, I mean, what do you do? Do you go to the police next day, or
yeah?
How was that happening for you?
For me, I never reported. There was a lot of fear for me. The first time, I didn't even really fully process what had happened. I knew that when I went to the Teen Plus Center to get Plan B, the doctor there asked me, "Oh, so how come you're here today?" Because I'm sure they have to deal with a lot of different scenarios. And I was terrified and didn't want to talk about it. This was a person that I knew and I trusted, and they did this. So I lied to the doctor and just said, "Oh yeah, the condom broke." And even when talking with my family later, the way that it came up, it was filtered as if I had said yes to this person. That's what family members heard, even though that was not the case. The second scenario, it was very different, because this was, again, a person I trusted. And the ironic part was, I was very, very drunk, the drunkest I've ever been in my life that night. I've never been a person that passes out, and that night I did. The last memory I have was being outside on my porch, and then I wake up in my living room on the sofa, and I'm kind of like spacey. I don't realize it, but he's asleep on the other couch, and I crawl up to my own bedroom, and then I find out after everything transpires, because he just stays in my bed, that apparently I had blacked out and I started vomiting, and I was laying on my back and was choking on it. So if he hadn't been there, I could have died. But then the irony is, because he was there afterwards, he followed me up to my room while I was completely obliterated and took advantage of a situation. So
okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I've never had an interview like that before, so yeah, it's a bit of processing in my head as well.
sure.
But okay, so you even to this day, you've never reported this.
No, I have not. There's been thoughts of it, but at this point, I have to ask myself, what is the motive behind it? What is the purpose behind it? What would I seek to receive out of it? What would I hope would occur? And I don't really know that I have answers for any of those things. I've moved on. I am continuously working on myself and the after effects of that trauma and how it shows up in other areas of my life. And I've forgiven them. I recognize their humanity and their
So
fucked upness, frankly.
you were able to like just let it go, forgive them, and move on, and you like you had your closure within you.
But I got there on my own without getting acknowledgement from them, without getting justice from, the police or anything. So.
Okay. Okay. Um, I mean, yeah, like, okay, just a few things from my coaching, because when I'm dealing with people who went through huge failures,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things is blaming it on outside of you factors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I can see from how you're describing it that you took, in a way, full responsibility.
Yeah.
It wasn't, of course. I mean, those two
Sure.
men are just pigs, and bad things should happen to them, but you can't change that, you can't influence
Right.
that, but you took the responsibility for your part, which is like number one thing you need to do, to start the recovery process. You need to just take the ownership, and
Yeah.
you need that closure. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need that closure with that other person. You need to find that closure, which in a way means peace within yourself. So
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
achieved that's amazing.
Thank you very, very
Um,
much.
how long did it take you? So you had two occasions. I'm guessing the first one took longer. The second one might be, it was probably taking a less amount of time. But how many days, weeks, months, years did it take you,
Mm.
in that processing? Like when you still sensed it as a failure or a negative thing before you like, did you even between the first and the second came to the closure, or that all happened after the second time?
Great question. Absolutely no closure after the first one.
Okay.
It really did occur in 2011. After that, 2011 and 12 were really transformative and powerful years for me in terms of kind of reclaiming my life. And ironically, the healing started through another relationship, and it was not a healthy one either, because when you've had certain things that are traumatic happen to you, and like I mentioned about losing a sense of self and self-esteem and self-worth, you accept a lot of things in your life that you really don't benefit from. I was in a 6-year long abusive relationship between the first and the second. And then after the second one, I've been very, very focused on investing in myself and transforming who I was, who I've been, learning about myself. I've gotten very, very curious, and every bit of my time is very introspective. I'm very thoughtful, and invest in coaches of my own. As a coach myself, I know the value of that. And so it's been a work in progress, but I'd say probably it took years. Honestly, it wasn't days or weeks. And there's still moments that in relationships, something might trigger feelings of being unsafe to this day. And I get to use the tools that I know and trust to trust myself and to work through that discomfort. So
Okay.
it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah.
One worth
um
taking.
I mean, after the second occurrence, so since 2012,
Mhm.
were you later on, even did you even came to the point of trusting again men to be
Yeah.
in new relationships?
Yeah. So that's kind of a fun story. So I can remember the first time I started putting myself out again in relationships. And I'd say, I'm trying to remember what year it was. It's either 2014 or 2015. I think it might be 2014, actually. 2014 it is. It was in October and I was traveling for work, and I happened to meet someone, and for the first time in years, I actually got like butterflies from someone. And I was like, oh my goodness, what does this mean? This is brand new. I haven't had this happen in a long time. I'm nervous. Okay, I'm just going to lean into it. Had to, coach myself through. And it was a very short, week, but also a really powerful one where, I got kissed again for the first time, and I was scared, but I set my boundaries there, and I was just so grateful for the opportunity that this thing aligned to show me that I am making progress on investing in myself and looking at men and people in a different way. And I was just so, so grateful for that experience and meeting that person. And that really was one of the most powerful moments in my recovery journey, for sure.
Nice. Very nice. I'm really happy. But if we dive back a little bit, what were some of the inner monologues that you had with yourself? And we can even, like, if you remember, still go to the first one, which was probably more powerful because it happened for the first time. So maybe walk us through a little bit.
I would say, that was almost 20 years ago. And I don't remember specifics of the monologues, like internally, but I do remember thinking things and not sharing them. I remember so desperately wanting to be loved still that I did confuse what transpired with affection and caring. And I remember I kept trying to seek attention and love anywhere and everywhere. There was times that I can remember talking to multiple men at once, just in conversation, flirting with different ones, because I thought, lust was love. And I didn't understand how important respect fit in with that for self and for someone else. I can remember thinking that I had to be or look a certain way. There was definitely a desire for attention, again, because I misunderstood what attention got me, for sure. That was definitely stuff that was happening after the first one.
Okay. But okay, now let's spin it off. Let's go to that. Did you so you said 2011, 2012 were really powerful years.
Yeah.
Was there like an aha moment, like this meeting with this? No, that was in 2014.
Yep.
But was there already before that some powerful aha moment that you can like pinpoint where something suddenly made sense, or was it like a slow transformation that one day resulted in you feeling differently?
Let's see. It was kind of both. So I ended that relationship, the 6-year long one, in early 2014, 2011. So many dates today. 2011. And I was on cloud nine. I hadn't been that happy in years, and I was graduating college at the time. And right before my graduation, someone from my past reached out to me. And again, I was still in this mindset of let me get attention through ways that I saw as being of value. So being sexual, flirting, making sure that I was overly complimentative. So I was behaving that way with this person that reached out. And so we started to connect. And I got very confused after a couple of months of our pursuing this kind of quasi unofficial relationship together. And I got very confused about how this person identified as a Christian and also was very comfortable like with talking dirty and having sex. And I was just like, okay, I need to go on a hunt. I'm feeling very curious. I don't know what to do with this. So I remember going to the bookstore quite a bit at the time, and I passed by this book, and it caught my eye, not because it had a title or a cover that really matched to what I was searching for, but it was a book my mother had mailed to my ex of 6 years. And when it came in the mail, she had told me she had saw it, thought of him, shipped it. And so when it came, he said, she didn't get this for me. And I was like, yes, she did. She told me she did. And he said, there's no way she got this for you. And I was like, no. And there was a bit of a back and forth until finally it just resulted in the book sitting on the shelf. And I never thought of it again until that day in the bookstore. And the book was Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller. It was a memoir of his. And I picked it up, read the back, and it just immediately touched me. And I bought it and read it over like the next week and started questioning like my belief system, because I hadn't really been sure of myself to know what I believed. Like, abuse and trauma will cause you to completely disassociate from yourself. And I couldn't even tell you at one point what my favorite color was, let alone what my beliefs were from, just a personal or spiritual perspective. So having read that book, I then started talking about it to this gentleman that I was in relationship with. He mentioned some other books and authors in a similar vein. I started reading about them, talking to a former coworker, and she recommended reading something else. And there was one night I was laying in bed and just recognized how all of this had happened to kind of bring me back into relationship with myself. And it was really a gift. And I just bawled that night. I think that was like September of 2011. And then I just was hooked. I was on this seeker journey and have been ever since.
Okay. And ever since, can you maybe, show us a little bit of an insight, what kind of transformations you went through? Because I feel that there were many. So if you can maybe just walk us through a few of them that were the major ones.
Sure. So I had a significant thing happen in 2012. I was working for a company that I had been for a number of years, and an opportunity came for me to relocate and take on a new role for the organization, and I accepted it. I moved to a city that was not one that I gelled with at all. It was very small, very different mindset, politically, personally, and I was very alone for those 6 months. And I was in a bit of a dark night of the soul at the time, existential crisis. And 6 months in, I knew that something had to change. And the company realized that I was not being utilized best by being there. They wanted to have me relocate again. And I thought about that and decided, I could take the relocation thing, and I feel in many ways that I would be no better off than I was before I moved here. What do I have to show for it? And the other option was, well, if I don't take that, I don't have another job lined up. I'd been looking for work, but nothing was really materializing. And meanwhile, this company offered a leadership program for management and up. And the more that I learned about leadership through reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I just knew that and I invested in myself, the more I knew that this was not the place for me anymore. So I ended up leaving the company, and I moved in with my parents at 30 years old into their retirement community in Florida. So it was quite a change. And it was during those 5 months that I really decided I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I claimed that and started making plans and dreaming about, what does my life look like currently? What would I want it to look like in a year or in 2 years? That was one major change. I would say another one happened in 2015. That was the first relationship that I had that was really healthy and good and respectful and conscious and just beautiful. And I never felt so free and so safe at the same time, and so attractive and respected. It was a wonderful relationship. I'm very grateful to him for modeling that for me. And it lasted, I believe, as long as it was intended to, for me to learn what I needed to. And I would have liked for things to end up a little bit differently, but I understand that there's a reason, a season, and a lifetime, and this was a seasonal relationship.
Okay.
So that was a really another significant moment, because it helped again solidify that I was still doing the right stuff. I was on the path. I was manifesting the relationships that I wanted. I was advocating for myself, and I was now attracting the kind of people that I was similar to, because like attracts like. So yeah, those were 2 really big moments in the journey for sure.
Nice. Oh, you walked us through the whole story, I think, really perfectly. And I hope this episode will reach a lot of women. I know that a lot of them went through similar experiences. I know that it's much more common that we are aware of. The whole thing, the abuse and the rapes and all of that, that it's much more present than we even know.
Yes.
But okay, to slowly walk this through the end, because I know that you have another appointment a bit later. If we maybe just go first to a little bit of who can contact you, and how they can get in touch with you, and then I'll save the one thing about failures for the
Sure.
last question.
Awesome. So I specialize in working with single women entrepreneurs, whether they're service providers or coaches, or they've got a brick and mortar. I love working with other single women. I think it's a very underutilized and under acknowledged group that exists. And so if you are one of those gals and you want help in leveling up your relationship with yourself, if you want to inject some fun back into your relationship with yourself, others, your business, you can get more information on my website, magicalmindfulness.com. And you can find me all over the web on social media at the Jen Moff. So hit me up. I've got a wonderful Facebook group that is called Single Solopreneurs Leveling Up. If you search for it, you should very easily find it. And we'd love to have you. It's a great free resource as you're beginning that journey or in the middle of it and want to deepen your efforts a little bit.
Nice. Well, I will of course include all these links in the footnotes and everywhere, so to make it really easy for them to find you. And now to slowly move into the closure of this interview, which was, by the way, really mind-opening for me, because honestly, I can't remember ever having such a conversation with somebody. So it was interesting to to hear it from the women's side, how it all happened. But yeah, the last question: if there is just one thing that you would like the audience to take away from this interview regarding failures, or of course how to fail forward or how to bounce back from all of that, what would that be?
Oh, it's one that I've recently come across and fallen in love with. And it's the idea that you're only truly failing if you're not trying.
One of my favorite ones.
Nice. Really
Yes,
nice.
one of my favorite ones. Well, Jen, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you being so raw, being open to talk about this. I can sense that it wasn't so hard for you, so that means that the healing is well done, or very close to being done. So
Thank you.
that's very nice to hear.
Thank you.
And yeah, just thank you for being you, thank you for being here, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Take care, and to the audience, guys, take care, and to the next interview. So